All right, well, we are all here. We're here for Beyond the Canvas Conversations with Gamma. I believe that this is our 12th episode of this, which is pretty cool. It's pretty funny. I don't know if you guys knew that when I called it Beyond the Canvas, I thought it was a nice name, but honestly, coincidentally, I shouldn't even admit this, didn't even realize that the acronym was BTC, which feels very apt. It's a pleasure to have you guys all on with us. So we've got MLow, PHRAZE, and Nate. They're all going to introduce themselves, or Nate might introduce himself as Crafted, but he's got both his names on the screen. Each of these artists has a release which is currently live, going to market on Signals, which is super exciting, and then we'll obviously be dropping on Bitcoin afterwards. So we'll definitely be diving into all of that. But before we do, it'd be great for everybody who's tuned in and for the people who are going to be watching this afterwards when this gets posted to our YouTube, and then eventually I'm going to work on getting it out to the podcast apps. Still working on that. But yeah, we've got MLow, PHRAZE, and Nate. So maybe MLow, will start with yourself. Give yourself an introduction for those who don't know you, who you are, where you came from, how you got here, and all of that good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me, Brett. It's been a long time coming. I think we've been talking back and forth about this job for a while, and it's been awesome for me because I've been inscribing this collection for over a year and a half now. Really, since I've been on the ordinal scene, I heard about it on a Twitter Spaces and started jumping in and learning more about that. But a little bit about my background. I grew up in New York. I'm a New York-based multidisciplinary artist, and my art basically is very psychedelic. It is very spiritual, and a lot of it is about questioning reality. And what I've been able to do on this collection on Bitcoin through Unchained is basically been able to take my style that's across my other across my portfolio and translate it onto Bitcoin. So anyways, thank you so much for having me today.
No, it's a pleasure, and we'll definitely be, diving further in. That was a brief intro to what is, what's already quite a rich kind of career and history and I guess like influence in the space, but we'll definitely get into that. But yeah, a brief intro is a good intro, but certainly want that elaboration. Not in any order of preference or anything like that, but PHRAZE, go for it.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. I know we've had a couple conversations. Let me know if I'm not coming in clear. I can kill my
You're coming
camera
in
because
nice and no, you're nice and clear. We're good.
oh, okay, good. I have been a self-employed artist for the last 15 years. I started with, ink on canvas and just selling my work online pre NFT days, and somehow managed to carve out a nice living doing that. And then discovered the NFT space, fell in love. For my first collection, I wrote the contract myself because I really wanted to understand how it was working, um, and kind of learned the shortfalls or the promises that were being made and not kept. And it didn't take long to discover Bitcoin and ordinals, and was really captivated by. I think creativity is born from constraint, and um, oh, I'm getting a connection error. Let me know. Let me know if I break up at all. Um,
No, you're
and I
still
just
you're still here. We'll let
Okay,
you know.
great. It's looking good now on this end. You guys, it was all freeze frames, but we're good. Um, I released a few collections on ETH. I did a giant NFT treasure hunt with 150 ETH in prizes, and got to know a lot of artists and community that way. I was on the team at Proof and then the team at Yuga. And that all ended earlier this year, and I've been just head down full force in art. I had a collection released at NFT Paris, which led to my first piece at Sotheby's, which was my very first ordinal, which was a 101. And I've fallen in love like full throttle with ordinals, and just captivated by the community here and the things that Gamma's doing. Signals has been a joy, but yeah, we can get into that in a bit. That's a little bit about me. That's a little bit about me.
Yeah, love that. Thanks for that. And yeah, again, it's quite a common story that obviously because the advent of Bitcoin ordinals was only, well, Inscription 0 was December 22, but, really kicked off in 2023. It's still very nascent, but, so we've all kind of come from somewhere. I don't know how, there might be some, but, a creator that maybe released their first digital works on Bitcoin, but everyone typically has sort of like gotten to the space a touch earlier. So it's always interesting stuff. What about yourself, Nate, or Crafted? How do you want us to refer to you?
Yeah, Nate's fine. Let's get on that.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, really happy to be here and talk shop with y'all. Yeah, my name's Nate. I go by Crafted for my artist profile. I'm a filmmaker, photographer, storyteller is my background. Got my MFA in film production from USC out here in LA, kind of stuck around the area. Been shooting stuff ever since. And I came across, I was early-ish to the Bitcoin space, like 2017. I guess not early, but early-ish. And kind of just started stumbling my way through, found NFTs right after that, and just kind of, I never made anything, but I collected plenty that are not worth a ton now. But I still love a lot of them. And I've discovered ordinals in the bitmap summer. So summer of 23, I wasn't the first few months, but right around summertime, I discovered it and kind of fell in love with the space. And that's when I created my first collection, Bitmap City, and I've since done a couple more iterations of that. But yeah, so I've been here. Everything I do is based on my photography. So it's all like a photo-based type of art, whether it's photo manipulation or layers with photo or, text, whatever it is. It's usually the foundation is at least photo, if not the whole thing photo. So that's a little bit of my background and my story.
Yeah, well, that was going to be something I was sort of curious about. If we go a little bit further back for all of you, how did you first, I guess, start creating, or when did you realize that you, had a penchant, I guess, for the arts or becoming an artist, and then obviously like finding blockchain? For some people, they found it because of NFTs, but for others, it was, they had heard about Bitcoin and they got into Bitcoin, and then ETH NFTs became, or other chains as well, sort of like came onto your radar as well. How did you all, and again, we don't have to go in order, like feel free to chime in, but how did you all kind of, like you said, Nate, you got into Bitcoin yourself in 2017, similar era to myself. What led you there, and also, artistically prior?
Yeah, so I got into it. So I discovered it. It was on an app, and I was like, okay, let me just check this out. And I had a friend who was like, hey, you should mine some Bitcoin. I actually have a whole story about the guy who was like early, and a buddy and I played a prank on him, and he ended up stopped mining. He got so scared. It was a terrible experience for him and me. We could have all been billionaires at this point. This was like when it first started. But I actually got involved with it. This is going to sound so strange. It was like in an orange field. I was doing a photo shoot about a chaplain who worked with the migrant workers who they literally get paid, and they have to take their money and they send it back to their families. And there's so much money taken out of their paychecks just from intermediaries that I remember I was listening to, funny enough, I think it was Charles Hoskinson talking about from ADA. So don't blame me, but, how you can take money and send it with almost no fees. And so that's what actually sent me down the path, because of these guys who are telling me I'm there photographing, telling their story, and they're telling me about I think one of them was starting to get into the blockchain technology, and I think he actually sent it, and I was like, so there's no intermediary, there's no fees? He's like, no, it goes straight to my family, they cash it out, and it's not a lot of money. So for me, that opened up my world, and I was like, oh shit, blockchain technology is a force for good. It allows your house, right? In impoverished areas, if somebody can't just come in and take your house, you have it on the blockchain, you own it. If, hopefully in the future, we're all there. But so I think for me, it was a very practical use case. And then deeper I dove, the more, I discovered about, ordinals, obviously NFTs, ordinals. And that, I think, Brett, a little bit of my past, I've been through, cancer and some deep stuff where I had to think about my mortality. And I'm like, what could I create that would literally last forever? I'm gone and my art's still going to be here. So I think for me, it was a massive wide eye open moment for me, of just a crazy technology that is once in a lifetime. And so I was like, I don't know how I couldn't be involved. And I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't as interested in creating my own art until I found Ordinals, and it like awakened me in a new way where I'm like, I have a fire under me to create. So it's a little bit about how I discovered it.
Yeah, like you said, we've spoken. It is a deep story. It is interesting how it starts, and obviously, like the on-chain art is so fascinating that way. And the blockchains weren't designed to store like this on-chain art, so it's been like a really nice kind of like I guess extra piece that's been able to be utilized. MLow, what about yourself? Where did it all kind of start for you? I guess both artistically, but then what drew you to blockchain? Had you bought a little bit of Bitcoin first, or did you come through art? Art definitely onboards people, like culture onboards a lot of people in society to many different things.
So I've been an artist since around 5 years old when I was overcoming cancer, and as part of my therapy, I did some art therapy, and I found that to be really helpful for my benefit of just like recovering and getting back into society, and also just expressing my feelings and in a way that like words really wasn't able to do through words. So for me, my art really became like my vessel for expressing myself. And I got into Bitcoin around 2016, 2017, like you guys. I actually hosted an international Model UN conference surrounding cryptocurrency at the time, and we did a lot of different like debates on what should the regulations, etc., be. And this was very early on, but back then, like I look back at like my notes from back then, and like the questions were like, should Bitcoin be like illegal or not, and things like that. And like now we see like today how like a lot of very established nations are starting to take part, and I mean we even have like institutions coming for our Bitcoin. So I think it's nice to have both. And then with regards to NFTs, I actually didn't really get into NFTs until around 2019. And then Bitcoin ordinals in around 2022. So it's been like a lot of multi-year process, but it's been really interesting, and I've really enjoyed the journey.
Yeah, interesting, and thanks for sharing about that. That must have been some really tough times. It's so interesting how like art can be used as therapy, and it's been such a driving force for you as well. And yeah, I love that. Should Bitcoin be illegal? And like you said, we've got nation states adopting it, institutions are coming for it. We've got I'm not getting into American politics, but you have like perhaps like a Bitcoin forward president and whatever else. But PHRAZE, I noticed, on Twitter, your handle now is PHRAZEBTC. You've made the what do we want to call it?
I made the leap.
You made the
I doubled down. I doubled down.
Call it a full transition. Yeah. Talk to us.
Yeah, it's funny. Something Nate touched on, and actually MLow, like, feels like we all have something in common. I have had health things of my own that were really scary that started a few years ago. Been faced with own mortality and I think as an artist or creator, we want to make things that outlast us. And the promise of art for forever on Bitcoin was like, yeah, this resonates deeply. Like, I think that was one of the biggest motivators, and getting to a place where you can make things as durable as possible with as few external dependencies as possible. Like that really struck a chord with me. Derek Edwards had some really good Medium articles on that kind of helped cement that idea for me. But the transition to Bitcoin, or really the doubling down, my entrance path in here was a little different in that I started day trading altcoins in like early 21 or 22, and like rode that up, and I saw what was happening with NFTs, but it was I felt like it was moving too fast for me, and I didn't want to like dive in fully. And it was Beeple's gargantuan sale that, like, I've been making and selling art for 10 years. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? There's attention and energy and effort here. And there's an excitement and energy. So I felt really lucky in that, I managed to join the proof community as a community member like day one, and they felt like at the time Proof was like the mecca. They were the tastemakers in art. It felt like they did a lot to help put Snowfro and Tyler Hobbs and other generative artists on the map, and it felt really good to get an art education from them, and that's how I started like kind of releasing my own work. And everything happening on ETH and everywhere else, great, it's wonderful, but I think um, it's surprising the difference between how differently I see Bitcoin and ordinals and any other NFT, and I feel like the market just hasn't caught up to how special this community and this tech and what's happening here is. So I want to kind of draw a line in the sand early and do all I can to be a champion of this space and a shepherd of contributor to everything happening here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously like any market, it is still young, and I think I like, the ETH NFT market is terrific as well. And the Bitcoin art market wouldn't be around if the ETH art market didn't exist. So, everyone's sort of like built on someone else's shoulders for sure. Yeah, actually it's a really good topic because Stephen Rice, from Ancora has written really well on, keeping things being culturally relevant. And, you can't just say, oh, this is better because of this. Obviously like a lot of, art takes work and art movements take work, and art movements also take time historically. So yeah, it's sort of like really fun to be at the very beginning of it, or at least, at the cutting edge / forefront / insert your cliche here, but it is true. Look, you've all got a release currently live on signals.art. They're all doing really well. Looks like there's been lots of interest. People have been able to place their bids, trying to gain their spots. We can see each of the your releases getting really great signal. Obviously, like, we can have a little chat about signals and how it works and what you find interesting about that. But let's learn more about each of your individual releases more. Where they came from, all the usual like inspiration and all of that sort of thing, but a little bit more deeply, like why did you bring those releases specifically to Bitcoin? Because I think that all blockchains are a playground, and when you bring something to Bitcoin, it's very intentional. So yeah, I'm curious about that. You can go for it first, MLow.
So my Unchained collection is a culmination of my portfolio throughout the last few years that I've been minting on-chain in general, with different variants on Bitcoin. And what I wanted to do was basically create a portfolio on the mother chain and have a way to have my name in the sand and have my legacy preserved forever. And I think that's a huge reason why people inscribe on Bitcoin in general. But for me, I've been doing this practice for several years now of just inscribing a piece every time there's a momentous occasion. Like when I won the Optimism We Love the Art competition, I inscribed a iteration of the flowers. The actual competition video is an animation, but I created a dithered down piece that was able to fit onto Bitcoin's block space, and like I actually minted those also on Mother's Day, I believe. So it's just been like a lot of labor of love, and over time it's been like a slow process, but I didn't want to just come out with like a release of prints and do one by one. I wanted to kind of have this full force and show it as a body of work, because I felt like it was really strung together and it helped tell my story block by block. And I felt like it was really important to inscribe them on special sets that helped enhance the story as well, because Bitcoin already is a special canvas, but adding them onto Block 9 sats made them all the more special. And when I started doing this, there wasn't really such an easy way for me to do like parent-child inscription, so I didn't really bother with that, but instead I decided to mint them all on special sats as a way of enhancing them. And then the collection as a whole is basically a culmination of my drippy AI aesthetic that carries over throughout the rest of my work. But as I said, it's pared down because it needs to fit the block space. So I feel like through that dithering process, they become really interesting pieces that almost look like old-fashioned prints that you would put on either t-shirts or newspapers or things like that, and it gives a very retro feel. And I feel like that putting them on Block 9 South as well, since I've been in Bitcoin for quite a while, felt like really special to me.
There's so much history, there's so much nostalgia, like you said, on Bitcoin, and so you've put them on the sats from all that time ago, and that's a really lovely way of adding provenance. PHRAZE, I know you put your collection, your first collection, Chronoblocks, on the special sats as well. Nate, not sure if you've dabbled with it. I know you've used parent-child and done 4 megas. You know, you guys, each of you have really, I guess, played with all of the things that are very Bitcoin native, because obviously you can do lots of different things on different chains, but there are some things that you can only do on Bitcoin, you know, which makes it very special. Before we do go to you guys, yeah, MLow, I guess, you know, you commented about how it's this kind of like ongoing inscribed body of work. That in itself is quite unique. I know you can kind of have a lazy mint on other chains, but to kind of put your work on chain over time, it's almost, I feel like it's sort of like telling a story of different stages for you.
100%. And also, like when I started inscribing, it was relatively expensive, and I was a student at NYU, so like having extra Bitcoin to put towards inscribing my art wasn't like the most reasonable thing to do, but I did it as I could with like my best work. So like these are what I feel like are my best work over the past 2 years, and I feel like it's been really special to have kind of that permanent stamp and kind of like have them be my entries into Bitcoin over time and like into that code. And I feel like the way that I inscribe them also helped preserve the story as well. I think if you could look into them, I also include a lot of different metadata details, and some of them include like inspiration and other collections that they're related to within my other bodies of work. So it's been a really, really awesome process. And like I said, I feel like this work, if I only had one body of work that I needed to point to quickly, like this would be that body of work for me.
Yeah, and that's really cool because you can tell this story on chain. The metadata lives on chain forever with the piece of artwork. And I think, you know, that's where we talk about the importance of immutability, you know, on top of provenance. You know, I know that Erin from Inscribing Atlantis has said, you know, she calls it the digital megalith. You know, in X amount of years, you know, when the aliens come and find our blockchain and have a look at what we were doing, all of this information is there. We're almost kind of like, you know, you're creating like a permanent record of your personal little history or whatever else. So yeah, interesting. You know, like we said, Nate and PHRAZE, you guys have explored different aspects that you can do: 4 megas, special sats, provenance, parent-child, you know, using I guess like really building out stories in your own work. You know, PHRAZE, yeah, tell us about your experience with that. And I guess you can refer to Chronoblocks. I know you were really particular with it.
I extremely, and I owe my crash course education entirely to NFT Supply. He also was pivotal in helping me get into Sotheby's, which was I owe a great deal to NFT Supply. So I really kind of leaned on him when it was time to inscribe the collection. He gave me a great crash course onto which, you know, they're rare sats or special sats. And I tried to map the visuals of the Chronoblocks collection to tell a story about the rare sats. So there were some on Hitman sats, there were some on Block 9 sats. There like just kind of tried to lean in, and it was just a little bit of effort, right? Like there's, because of the history, because of the provenance of rare sats, you have an opportunity for that to add to the dialogue of any piece that you're working on. And a lot of, I wouldn't say like super rare sats, but like a lot of the special sats, even pizza sats, right? Even though they're hyper abundant, if it can lean into the narrative of your work, it's like it's just one extra tool to have at your disposal. So even this new collection I have going, I have plans for, throwing it on specific sats for specific reasons. And I just think like that's one of the things that's great about Bitcoin is there's other levers you can pull or other tools at your disposal. So why not, why not honor the space that you're in, and kind of play to the arena you're in. So that was my approach with rare sets. But again, like I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. NFT Supply is the guy. He's the guy that made me look good when it came to inscribing that collection.
Yeah, shout out NFT Supply. I've met him a couple of times IRL when I've been over to the States for work. Lovely guy, and had a couple of phone calls with him, and he's killing it, knows what he's up to. Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that. I'm glad you brought it up. I think that sometimes there's a misconception that just using special sats, call it special sats, exotic sats, whatever you want to refer to them as. Obviously, like, when they add a layer of meaning or a layer of narrative, or they make sense to the art, that's where they're really additive. I think, we've seen it, anecdotally, you look at the market, there are collections that have been on pizza sats that are become borderline irrelevant. That's just life but when they get used effectively, that's the beauty of them. So regardless of their scarcity or not, some special sats are obviously more scarce than others. But like you said, pizza sats are in abundance. What was it, like 10,000 Bitcoin Laszlo Hanyek paid, for those pizzas. 10,000, times 100, there's 100 million. Yeah. 100 millionth in a bit. Yeah. That's a lot of pizza sats that are floating around. Even Block 9s, Block 9s are amazing. But there were like, and I love them. So just prefacing it with that, but there are a lot of them because in the early days, obviously, like there was, more, Bitcoin in a block reward. So, but at the same time, when they're used effectively, when they're used for a reason, they're super powerful. So yeah, Nate, feel free to comment on that, but also, yeah, you've inscribed 4 megas. That's also something very unique to Bitcoin. Not because of the size specifically, because obviously on ETH or Tez or whatever, you can have much bigger files, but because, for people listening, and Nate will comment on it, one whole Bitcoin block, you cannot get bigger than that. That's inscribing a whole block to yourself. So forever, that block had one transaction with an artwork, and it was Nate's.
How much did that cost you?
Yeah, good question. It does vary depending on fee rates and whatnot, but Nate can tell us about it.
Yeah, it was, man, that was when I don't know, I was kind of with you on that, MLow. I was like, if I'm going to throw my work down on Bitcoin, like, I'm going to try and do it right. And it was like the first collection that I was like, this is the one that's going to go big. I'm a storyteller, and so it was Fractured Reality, which was like 16 different chapters in one image. And it's kind of like the story that I would tell through. It's like a whole narrative arc that follows a girl named Nim, and kind of like her journey into grief and like almost death. And then she ends up coming up and she survives, and she's like she becomes this, I don't know, badass girl. So it's kind of like representative of my journey of like almost dying and coming back up and surviving and being like, yeah, come on, come at me now. I can take on pretty much anything when you've been to hell and back. So for me, yeah, I put it on 4 mega, which is actually technically is like 3.69 or 3.96. So as big as I could technically get it, in being, I think at the time it was number 6 or 7 when I inscribed it, the largest, and it was the largest on a Block 9 sat inscription ever. So I think now Danny took that back from me, which I'm happy to give it back to him with his digital monolith of I think he put all of the ord on one sat, which is wild. But yeah, like for me, stories, I mean, everything for me is like drives by story. And so this was like, it didn't make sense to not have them all in one, like, image together. And like, I love Bitcoin. I love it like so much. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I do struggle with that 4 megabyte limit, but even like 396 kilobytes, if you're going to do a different image, coming from the, like, the photography and video world where you're shooting 50 megabytes an image, or you're shooting 1 terabyte an hour. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I compress the shit out of my stuff, and it hurts my soul a little bit here and there. So I think that same image that I put in 4 mega is technically it was a 150 megabyte image. So I had to keep crushing it down to get it to look good enough to fit, but also to fit within the constraints. So I can't tell you the amount I've learned. So I didn't have an NFT. I can't remember his name. I didn't have a guide. My only guide was LIFO FIFO. So I was like in his Discord all day asking questions. Then he put me to Greg. I asked 1,000 questions to Greg, and then I ended up working with Byron from Trio as well. They're actually the ones who actually ended up helping me inscribe it because it was right before the Wizards launched their self inscribing tool where you could do it, which if I'd waited another couple of months, it would have been thousands cheaper. Luckily for me, like I think I ended up paying, it was $6,000 to put that 4 mega on, which if it had been, so basically this is what I learned. If it's in the top 5, you're paying a hefty like fees to be in the top 5. You're paying like $50,000. And I'm like, well, I don't have that. I'm just, I'm just an artist who wants to put his art on Bitcoin. So I went as big as I could get and being just out of the top 5. And so at the time it was, $6,000. Slipstream Mara, now you can go through, the Wizard of Ord's tool and you can broadcast it, or you can like inscribe but not broadcast, take that broadcast, do it separately in the mempool, and then take it to Mara Slipstream, and you can paste it in there, and then you can like inscribe that way. I think their minimum fee rate is three sats, so it would be $3,000 basically for the same size image that I did now versus when I did it. It's probably way more information than anybody needs.
Yeah. Just real quick, hats off for 4 meg inscription. It was one of the things that I really wanted to do with my parent inscription. I didn't do. Also, LIFO FIFO, is that the name? I'm pretty sure that's who I have to thank for, they put a version of the P5JS library on. I was like scrambling, searching, figuring out a way, because I work in P5JS almost exclusively. They put out an article on Medium. They were like, just copy this and drop it in. And it was like, oh wow, like this is things like people are putting stuff online that other people are on chain that other people can call to and reference, and like it kind of became a like, oh, okay, how else can I contribute? But like LIFO FIFO as a resource has just been, was another incredible resource for sure.
Man, like not to just plug him hard, but like, I love what he's doing in the space because he's a builder. Like there are people who, put out collections and then they just stop, they take the money, they do whatever they want with it. But this is a guy who like, he keeps cranking. He keeps building tools, keeps building incentives into using the tools. So like if you own 5 or more of any of his collections, you get free. You could use them for free. So it literally takes away every fee, and like so you can inscribe with like 0 fees other than what it takes to actually put it on chain. So for me, I'm like, it's almost a no-brainer to own. If you're going to be inscribing for all of eternity, it makes sense to own 5 of these pieces, and including batch. Like I did a whole airdrop to the based community, which is like an art community subsection in Ornals, and I just did a drop, and it was like I ended up totaling it all up. It ended up being about with the actual inscription fees, like it was like $200 something, and I dropped 222 pieces, and it was like. It would have been so much more if I'd had to pay for extra fees on top of just the inscription fees. So it was wild. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff, like the details and nitty gritty.
So that was like an addition that you dropped to 200 people?
Yeah, it's like this. They're called base art, and it's like just a group of artists who show up online to support each other. And I just did it as like a fun surprise. I don't know. I just want to do a drop. I just want to be like, send it out like, hey guys, thanks for being our community. I think a lot of people take, and I think for me, I like to just, I don't know, like give some art out to the people that like mean something to me. So yeah, I should probably rethink that model sometimes and make some money, but it'll get there. It's fun.
No, look, it's a goodwill, and what goes around comes around. You've got the base art hat on as well, we said earlier, so shout out to the base community, like Bean and all of the artists involved there. I think Artist Dutch is there, and there's Lex, there's a bunch. And also, shout out LIFO FIFO. I don't know why in my head I call him LIFO FIFO, kind of comes out more that, but I'm sure it's LIFO FIFO.
No, maybe it is like, LIFO FIFO, I don't know.
No, I don't know, he can tell us. It comes from the first in, first out, like in regards, I assume, in regards to how the sats are inscribed. But anyway, yeah, it's cool stuff, and that's the thing. You can do some really interesting things. There's different inscription services, and then obviously, you can distribute it, sell it, display it, and whatnot in different ways, and on Gamma. So it's it's a pleasure to have each of you guys working with us and on Signals, which has been really interesting way to go to market. It's a new product of ours. It's about finding real demand, because obviously in this space, as we all know, there's a lot of bullshit on Twitter, and you don't know if things are real. You don't know if the demand's real. You don't know, like, you see a post with like 1,000 reposts, and you're like, are there even 1,000 active people in the space? How did that get that much interaction? And each of your collections, is getting some really nice demand. So, you don't have to help me sell Signals to the people, but I'm just more curious, what when we talked about it, you thought, yeah, cool, I want to use Signals to go to market to find the demand for my drop. From each of you, just curious, maybe like the main thing that grabbed you, or what you've kind of like appreciated about, when I say appreciate, I'm like, don't shower me in kudos, what you've kind of enjoyed about the process. I don't know who wants to go first.
I got some thoughts on this. You want to start?
Yeah.
So just kind of taking it way back, the very first art I started selling online, pre-NFTs, I ran a site where I did a piece a day. And what was interesting about it is 2011, 2012. What was interesting about it was a pricing mechanic. Like, I hadn't done art in a long time, so I knew that the first pieces were going to be kind of dodgy, and then it was going to hopefully improve over time. So I sold the first piece the first day for $1. The next piece, it was $2. The next piece, it was $3. These were 12 by 24 inch ink on canvas pieces. And, adding all that up, it became a pretty considerable rake at the end of it. And then I went to a model where it was like every 5 pieces that sold, the price increased $5. And I've always really been drawn to unique pricing models. And I think part of it, Nate, going back to your or tapping into your storytelling roots, I want to get to some storytelling stuff eventually if we have time. But one of the things that artists that's challenging with art is creating a sense of urgency. And this model, and you want to attract the right people, right? This model took a lot of the guesswork out of, or a lot of the pressure. Like, I didn't feel the same, or I can't speak for these two, but I'm sure they probably feel a similar sentiment where I haven't felt the, like, I have to be like, what's it going to take to get you into this Miata? Like, I didn't have that, like, used car salesman energy of, like, buy my shit, buy my shit, buy my shit. Instead, what the platform's allowed for is this nice way for, you guys have a community of collectors that seem, really passionate about what they're collecting, and presenting the work in this way and letting it kind of organically find itself. Like, kind of letting your hands off the wheel and, like, letting the market decide, because that's what happens anyway, right? Like, yeah, you can set a higher price and you can fool some of the people some of the time, and, like, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not I have a love-hate relationship with flippers. Like, I want the people who collect my work to, like, hold it forever. Like, obviously, always secondary markets are wonderful. But people that buy art just to speculate on it, I feel, less good about. But here, there's, you guys you've been really thoughtful about the mechanics, and it's seeing people actually sign up on their own accord and without the kind of dog and pony show has been really nice. So, it's a lot of words to say. It's been a really nice experience so far.
No, I love that. And, completely agree, because like you said, the market's going to decide anyway. So you want to know, what does the market actually think? And it sets you up for greater success. In the end, it's like an economies of scale thing. Sure, you can sell a few things for more, but then maybe not all of them. But if you can sell all of them for a little bit less, then you've actually done better. And then it's been better for the collector as well. So it balances out and is a positive for both sides. I just had a look. I didn't realize, well, congrats before we get on with it, all of you have got more than 100% signal. So that means that there's, more people interested than spots. So that's all things trending really well. So hats off to each of you. And that's the whole thing, right? It's like with any product market fit. Trevor Owen said it really well on a space the other day. You do want more demand than supply, because that's what drives interest. And that's just how any product works. That's not just with art. That's not just with like PFP collections and whatnot. It's like when there's more demand than supply, that means that the product is sought, after. So that's, and I say product, I know I'm referring to art, so I'm not trying to commoditize it, but I'm just saying, like, in general, in any business, that's the goal. So that's really good. So all trending in the right direction. So hats off. But yeah, MLow, we met, we'd been in touch, but we met properly sort of like semi recently, and yeah, signals and the whole idea of it sort of stood out to you. So I'm curious your thoughts.
I've been on the Bitcoin side for a while. That said, like, I don't necessarily want to be going and marketing the project in a person-to-person type interaction. Obviously, I'd love to meet collectors and get to know everyone who's collecting my work. But in terms of logistics, like, it's not like ETH where you can just like track down a wallet and see who likes to collect what, etc. It's very complicated with regards to how everything's abstracted away. And for me, in terms of building a community, this kind of helps me streamline that a little bit more, because I already have a community that's on ETH, and this helps them come over to Bitcoin a little bit easier as well. And right now I know that, like, whatever happens, all 44 pieces are sold. Obviously, like, pricing, hopefully it'll get to above whatever it cost me to inscribe them. But in terms of like knowing that demand for the project is there is really nice.
Yeah, and I think that that's well said. And I think also, it's like, and I totally say this with respect to, obviously, I think that artists know their worth and should price things what they think. But also sometimes then if the market's saying, look, we love the work, but, this is perhaps what we're more willing to pay, then you go, okay, well, like, I might readjust my expectations. It kind of like sets everybody up for success. And that's certainly the goal. So obviously, like, we want more signal. We want more people. Oh, we lost PHRAZE. He'll come back. We want more people going for it. And the more demand, the more signal, the better. But yeah, all of you, like I said, hats off, more than 100% signal. That is a really, really terrific thing to see. So yeah, Nate, what about yourself?
Yeah, man. First and foremost, it's like you don't have to guess market conditions. You don't have to guess what people are willing to pay. It's automatic. You know what they're going to pay, and who wants it, if it's not doing well, okay, then that's good to know too, and figure out why, and you can adjust in the future. But I think also, so that's probably one of the biggest ones. I think also another one of the major ones for me is that, you have a partner. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, coming from the film world, usually I work with a producer, I work with an editor, and we have distribution channels. In the art world, it feels like, at least on like Web3, it's like you're a solo. And like, there's beautiful parts of being solo, because then you can move as fast as you want and create into the middle of the night if you want, and you can create that type of art. The problem is then you got to also take time out of creating. And for me, I love creating. That's what I love. I don't love the marketing side. So then you got to take time out to go and schlep it. You know what I mean? Like, for lack of a better word, to anybody who might be interested. And it's also hard to know where to go. Where do you go to do this at? So I think this is like a built-in partner. And you have actual people behind this website who care and are building and are like invested in it. And so I think for me, that's like, man, that's like the whole battle right there. And it just takes off so much mental stress and energy that it takes for me to market that stuff. So it's massive.
No, I really appreciate the kind words. And, we can't do it without you guys either. And I love that you use the word schlep, good little kind of like a throwback to a nice kind of like popular culture Yiddish word. Always flies. But yeah, like I said, unfortunately we lost PHRAZE. If he doesn't come back, thanks so much for joining us. Go and check out his project Drift right now on signals.art. But, we've got MLow and Nate still with us. Yeah, MLow, you sort of we'll circle back a little bit. You talked a little bit about it before, and I love that you kind of said, it's very intentional work that you've chosen to put on Bitcoin, some of your best work. Talk us through that thought process, and then, yeah, maybe tell us a little bit more deeply about the collection. Like, it's 44 pieces. what can people expect when they go and have a look at it?
So the collection, when I say that it's my best work, it's work that I felt really encapsulated both a feeling and also a moment in time in terms of both where I was at in my personal life, but also crypto and the zeitgeist of what we're building towards in crypto art. And I felt that it was really important to inscribe it on Bitcoin at the time that I was, before the institutions really were coming and before a lot of other like mass onboarding and mass adoption came, because I felt like, obviously it's nice to say that you're early, but I've been with investing in Bitcoin since around 2015, 2016. So for me, I felt like I am early anyways. I might as well get my work on there relatively early compared to where I know things are going to be headed, because also as fees go up and as Bitcoin gains more popularity, it's only going to get more expensive to inscribe my work. So I felt like it was really important to put a portfolio up on Bitcoin and do it in the way that I could. I mean, I wasn't able to do a huge collection at the time in terms of like figuring out all the logistics, etc. But for me, like doing it piece by piece really felt like it was part of the process, and it also felt like it meshed well with Bitcoin's culture in general of block by block. So I think in terms of building, this collection's been really special to me, and it kind of gives like some of the greatest hits in terms of they're not necessarily pieces that I've released before, but they're pieces that are in connection to other pieces that have been released before elsewhere, and these are different variations of those pieces. And I think that it gives a little bit of a story when you bring them all together under that style. So I mean, I really appreciate you allowing me to come and join and tell my story.
No, like I said, it's an honor. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, that's a very special way to put it. And I like the parallel between the block by block and you're kind of putting it out piece by piece. And yeah, when I say best, obviously, not taking away from any of the other work that you've done, but like you said, kind of like referring to it, and it's related to it, and it feels these pieces you've chosen very specifically and curated specifically for this drop. I did actually also want to touch on MLow. You said you've been using some dithering. I believe you've been using some of Did's tooling, so he's an absolute on-chain beast. So shout out to Did. Yeah, for those who don't know what you mean when you say that, yeah, maybe let people know, and also to check him out because they're very, very cool guy as well.
Yeah, definitely shout out to Did. I was introduced to Did, I think, through my friend F. who actually just released a collection with him and on art blocks called Cities, which you definitely should check out as well. I think it's still minting. And for me, I've always been fascinated with on-chain art, but like Nate was saying earlier, for photographs, videos, etc., it's very hard to get the multi-megabyte, if not gigabyte file sizes down to kilobytes, and it was very tough for me to figure out a way to find something that truly felt like it was my voice and still my style, while also like being able to go within the restrictions of Bitcoin. And I felt like the title of the collection, Unchained, is part of metaphor also for the style of the collection, because it's unchained to any like style, and also unchained to any blockchain in general, because my art is across multiple chains, and I have pieces from this collection that are minted on ETH, also on chain. And for me, I felt like it was really important to also not have anything have external dependencies, and really be like breaking free from any external things like museums or galleries or anything else. And obviously I aspire to have my work in different galleries and different museums, but for me this felt like I'm publishing this out to Bitcoin right now, and whatever happens in the future happens in the future, but for me right now it was important that I published it this way.
I love that and completely agree. And apart from, the very few miners, the very few node runners running knots, shout out to Luke Dash and all the haters, but your artwork, your files are stored on thousands and thousands of nodes on the Bitcoin network, like you said, and of course aspiring for, for some of that showcasing, but it is on I guess like the biggest gallery in the world, if you do want to put it that way. Basically like this is kind of a funny way to put it, but almost like the permanent internet in a way. Yeah. What about yourself, Nate?
Yeah. Before I even hop in, I just want to comment on that. I love the idea of being dead and somebody at 2 a.m. in some other country finds your art and like connects to it and resonates with it. And it's like, I love this stuff. Like, and just like kind of, and then finds your provenance tree, your child, your family, and they kind of work their way through. I just love that idea. And I hope that happens one day and forever. Yeah. So my project called Does AI Dream? It's born out of this, it's kind of the thoughts I've been having with AI and, just living online in a future. That's also the same kind of thing, like 50 years from now. So my daughter she's 3 years old, three in a couple months. And she'll come up to me and say, I want to talk to Siri, meaning she wants to talk to ChatGPT, the voice version. So I'll pull it out and we'll have conversations, and ChatGPT will ask her like, hey, how's your day going? And she'll be like, oh, I'm going to the park. And they'll just like literally talk back and forth while I'm there. And I got to interpret some words because Siri can't understand her all the time. But it got me to thinking like, dude, these things are right now. And she even asked, she's like, can you come with us? And ChatGPT's like, no, I'm inside the computer right now, but I hope you have fun. I'm perfectly happy. But then it got me to thinking like, well, will there be a day when AI is not constrained to a computer and it's not constrained to like, what we want it to be? We're giving it all the prompts. We're giving it all the things, right? It's like the everything computer and it consumes it all, but it's what we give it. So will there be a day when AI becomes its own being, like separated into its own body, dreaming its own dreams, and maybe it is formed by us. Maybe this robot wants to go out into these like crazy places, like these landscape shots that I shot, and like go and explore on its own to see it for itself. I don't know. So that's a wild tangent, but that's like the backstory of what got me into thinking about this series. And it's like photo manipulation. It's 100% my own photos I've shot over years, catalogs of just photos when I go out. And so I pulled these things and put them together from the model I shot in studios. Actually, my niece, who's a singer-songwriter. So she came in and we photographed her. And like, I started piecing together, like, I got macro shots of butterflies and I got wires from the middle of London out off the subway. I'm like, these things look awesome. So I shot them and then like used them later to like the landscape shots, which are literally across the world from Israel to, like Salt Lake to, who knows where, Catalina Islands. That like there's stuff shot in the middle of the ocean. So yeah, it's a conglomeration of just like the things that we input that I think AI would seek out if it was going to build this like this weird world. And I put it all together and I did it in stages because I wanted to build like AI would build. So I did it in different iterations. So like a version 1 was a super simplified version. I took that version, I gave it a couple of days. I went back to it and I pushed it further to see what would happen. And I would bring in pieces from other pieces to it, to the different, artworks. So the 12 pieces, it's a 12-piece collection. They kind of started getting commingled, and I give it a couple of days. And for the third iteration, which is the final iteration, I pushed it even way further. So it's kind of like all over the place with pieces from the first piece down to the last piece. And the last thing maybe I'll say on that is that I wanted to also be cognizant that, we're feeding prompts. Not only are we feeding our imagery, but we're feeding words. So I took, for each one of the 12, I had a specific quote or poem that has resonated with me over the last couple of years. And I intentionally used that as my guide to like push it in different directions. And it may have ended up way out here, but it's still like you could trace it back to the quote that I used. So yeah, that's a little backstory on it.
Yeah, thanks for diving into that. And it is interesting stuff. Like, I don't know if there's a kids movie. It's actually a kids movie, but honestly, it's an adults movie in my opinion. It's called Wild Robot, which I watch with my kids. I don't know if you've seen it, Nate.
I haven't. I want to watch it. I saw a trailer for it not even that long ago. I'm like, this looks awesome. Yeah.
It's absolutely stunning. You could sit down and watch it as an adult. Not going to lie that I may have shed a tear near the end of the movie, but it kind of like dives into a bit of that. It's like very, very touching, very like thematically very on point film. But yeah, so yeah, again, so people can get to head to signals.art and check out Does AI Dream, which is your project, Nate. We've talked about a little bit more about Unchained by MLow, so we'll finish off. It was great to speak to the other artists as well. Thanks so much for spending time with us, and when the other guys listen back, thank you so much, MLow and PHRAZE. This has been a real pleasure. I love these conversations. This is such a fun part of my job. I just get to hang out with artists and chat art and chat blockchain and chat Bitcoin and chat AI and all of this cool stuff. So Nate, thank you so much for joining us, and congrats. So far with how Does AI Dream is going, and hopefully more people jump on, add some more signal, and check it out.
Heck yeah! Before we go, Brett, I do want to say I want to flip the tables just a second and say thank you for the drop on the order gallery pass. If y'all haven't checked out Brett's stuff with the Pandemonium, like crazy stuff. Birds of a Feather, order gallery is wild. You can create literally your own gallery. So I just want to give you a shout out, Brett, and say, dude, I appreciate what you and your team are building. So yeah, it's great.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's a colleague of mine at Gamma, so very lucky to work with him, Albert. He's an absolute goat. He is an engineer and also looks after our support, and then is my teammate at the Pandemonium. So it's good to have, fun to have a little baby, in the space as well that isn't the full-time gig with Gamma and Signals. But look, that's there for artists and collectors, just like obviously like Gamma is, for artists and collectors, and I think like that really fits my ethos and what attracted me to the space. So it's super fun, so we get to interact in different ways. But Nate, thanks so much for hanging out. Love the drop. Stoked to have you on Signals.
Appreciate it.
Really well done with I've forgotten the name
from the Fractured Reality.
Yeah, Fractured Reality.
Yeah.
Super cool stuff. It
Thanks.
looked really well collected. That was really fun to work with you for that, and long may it continue. So have a great
Thanks,
evening.
Brett. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Peace.
Bye.